Hey guys, how's it going? Alex Scott here with TrueFire.com. Thanks so much for tuning into another one of our videos. I am very excited. I got a new guitar. I think everybody's excited when they get a new guitar, right? And this is the new guitar that I have gotten. It's crazy, right? So this is from a company called Agile, which is distributed by Ronda Music in Connecticut. Awesome guys, great guitars, great prices. This particular model is called the Perihelion. This is an 8-string, multi-scale, headless design with a super ergonomic sort of single cutaway body and a floating bridge. All extremely modern designs and features, right? I love this thing. It's lightweight, it's super compact, it plays beautifully, and it sounds incredible. But in getting this guitar, it really made me think about guitar design. Now, obviously all this stuff, multi-scale, active Fishman pickups, these are all very, very modern features, but they had to come from somewhere, right? The history of guitar design is fascinating. And in this video, I wanted to take a look back and really try to think about what are the 5 most iconic guitar designs of all time. Where did these ideas come from? Where did we start when it comes to designing these wonderful instruments that we love so much? So I've put this list together of what I think are the 5 most iconic designs. Now, what do I mean by iconic? Well, obviously they need to be distinctive, preferably very, very popular. A lot of kind of famous players have played these models, but also I kind of thought about, well, what is ubiquitous? What do you kind of see everywhere? Obviously we have players like Trey Anastasio from Phish, who plays a very special signature guitar from Languedoc. We have people like Jerry Garcia, whose guitars were very, very famous, and you could argue are iconic, but they're not particularly ubiquitous. They're very, rare individual one-off instruments. So those were kind of my criteria. The list is in no real particular order, so we're gonna run through the 5. I do have a couple of honorable mentions as well, but if you think that something should be in there that isn't, please let us know in the comments. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Just don't get mad at me. These are my opinions and not gospel. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the list with number 1, the Fender Telecaster. So let's set the stage for the Telecaster here just a little bit. The year is 1950. The state of modern music is shifting rapidly. Rock and roll is in the process of being invented, rockabilly, these much louder, much more aggressive styles. And for years at this point, guitar players have been trying to figure out how to make themselves louder. Well, enter 2 men, Leo Fender and Doc Kaufman, who ran Fender's radio service, a small electronics repair shop. Now, they were experimenting a lot with different pickup designs that could be installed in existing hollow body and, in some cases, acoustic guitars. But they needed a way to efficiently test these designs, swap out parts, wire up different configurations. And so they put together a very simple sort of plank of wood with strings on it that they could easily attach pickups to. People quickly realized that this was actually a pretty slick idea. It was lightweight, it was easy to move around, and if you built it into the shape of a sort of proper guitar, it would be pretty easy to play. The tone was extremely unique, it was bright, it had great sustain, and it could very, very easily be amplified without any feedback. And so Leo Fender got the idea for the Fender Telecaster. Now, the Telecaster is incredibly special on this list because it truly is the first production model of a solid body electric guitar that was mass produced and sold at retail. Now, originally the guitar design was actually called the Broadcaster, but Gretsch shortly thereafter sued Leo Fender because they had a line of very popular drums at the time called the Broadcasters, and so they ended up changing the name to the Telecaster. Now, the hallmarks of the Telecaster design are, of course, a single cutaway body, 2 single coil pickups, a 3-way selector switch, volume pot, and tone pot, making it really, really easy to set up, really easy to get tones with, and it sounds great. The angle of the bridge pickup and its proximity to the bridge itself gives that pickup an incredibly bright, twangy, aggressive, top-end sound that's perfect for country. And the neck pickup is really warm and thick and rich, and when you blend them together, you just get a beautiful, even tone out of the Tele. Now, over the years, Telecasters have been seen in the hands of Keith Richards, Bruce Springsteen, Albert Collins, Bill Frisell, Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead, country great Waylon Jennings, Andy Summers, and Brent Mason, a modern country star who we just happen to have a few courses with over on TrueFire.com. Go check those out. They're really cool. But just a few years later, Leo decided to iterate on his design a little bit more, and in the process, he hit 2 out of the park right in a row. Because the next most iconic guitar design that I want to talk about is my personal favorite, and that is, of course, the Fender Stratocaster. Now, just a few years after introducing this iconic Telecaster, Leo decided to take everything he had learned in that design process and introduce a better, bigger, sort of bolder version with some new and very interesting ideas, and he called it the Stratocaster. He adjusted the body design to be a dual cutaway design for easier access to the high frets, moved from 2 pickups to a 3 pickup configuration while keeping the 3-way selector switch and volume tone pod. He also added a new patented design of his very own for a vibrato bridge. This was incredibly unique at the time and gave players a whole new world of sounds to experiment with. The body was also contoured. So it has the nice sort of cutaways on the upper bout and stuff so that it sits easier into your body, making it a much more comfortable playing experience than the original Telecaster. Now, one of my favorite things about the early Strats is that, nowadays we think of Strats as having a 5-way selector switch, right? The original Strats actually only had a 3-way selector switch, so you could only go neck, middle, and bridge. However, players figured out that if you sort of got the switch just right, just perfectly in between that first and, well, at the time was the second position, they created what we now think of as the second position. It wasn't designed to do that. You had to sort of fiddle it just so. And this was true up until 1977. But of course, after Fender realized how great this sounded, they moved to a 5-way selector switch and then ultimately ended up wiring that middle pickup so that when you were in second or fourth position, it would act as a humbucker system, thereby eliminating hum from the signal. Very, very cool and very smart on Fender's part. Now, if you ask me, more iconic guitar players throughout history have played Strats than almost any other model. You've got Jimi Hendrix, you've got Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Mayer, Eric Johnson, also a TrueFire alum. Check his courses out. Link will be in the description. Very, very cool. I could go on and on and on. Practically every great guitar player in history has picked up a Strat at some point. They're just incredible instruments, and that's honestly why it is my favorite of all the guitars on this list, just personally speaking. But moving on from the Strat, Fender was not the only player on the guitar scene in the 1950s, and shortly after the introduction of the Telecaster, Gibson guitar president Ted McCarty decided that they needed to step up and compete. So he brought on Les Paul, who had originally pitched this bizarre guitar design called the Log a couple years prior, and together they designed the very first Gibson Les Paul, which came out in 1952. Now, the initial design was the classic gold top finish with dual P90 pickups. In 1957, they changed over to humbucking pickups and added a few new colors, including the all-black, sort of Black Beauty Les Paul, as well as a Sunburst model. Now, those era Les Pauls, like 57, 58, 59, are some of the most coveted instruments on earth at this point. If you can even manage to find an original one, it's going to run you well over $100,000 easily. But interestingly enough, they actually weren't super popular at the time. They didn't really sell great. People were really enamored with the Fenders, and they ended up changing over in 1961 and re-releasing that same kind of concept as the SG with that dual cutaway design. But popular demand and people really falling in love with the original design, they brought it back in 1968. Nowadays, and over the years, there have been zillions of different Les Paul variations released by Gibson, the standard, the studio, the custom, the classic, all these different options. It's renowned for a tight and cutting sound, and because it has these humbucking pickups that lend themselves really well to high gain, Les Pauls are almost always played distorted. It's pretty uncommon to see anyone playing a Les Paul with a totally clean tone, and they work beautifully for it. Certainly much better than the offerings from Fender. Notable artists who have played Les Pauls almost exclusively in their careers include Jimmy Page, Slash, Joe Perry, Peter Frampton, Pete Townsend, Dwayne Allman, Kirk Hammett from Metallica, and Robin Ford, who is another one of our alumni on TrueFire. We will stick links to Robin's courses down in the description. Go and check them out. So as time moved on through the 1950s, guitar players had more and more options to choose from if they wanted a full solid body electric guitar option. However, a lot of sort of tonal purists still really preferred the really rich, warm bottom end of traditional archtop and fully hollow body designs, but that's the whole problem we were trying to solve originally, right? Those designs feed back really badly when you try to amplify them, and so that's why we went with solid bodies. But in 1958, Gibson said, hey, what if we combined these two designs? Maybe a bit of a compromise, but what if we took a solid center block and then did just sort of hollow wings on either side? And the concept for the Gibson ES 335 was born. Now, the 335 is not the only guitar that Gibson has made like this. There's a whole bunch of different designs, the 330, the 339, 345, 355, etc., but they all follow that same design principle of a solid maple block in the center and hollow wings. Many of them have F-holes for forward projection, so it's kind of a best of both worlds situation. You still get that really rich low end, rich bottom end, and really a kind of natural sustain and attack, but you also get the advantage of being able to amplify it without the instrument feeding back too badly. Now, arguably one of the most famous 335 designs of all time is B.B. King's Lucille. Beautiful black guitar. It's not actually one guitar. He played a couple of different ones over the course of his career. All of them were named Lucille. And now Gibson offers, of course, a signature model, as they have, I think, since the 80s. It was really originally designed to be more of a jazz and blues instrument, but it honestly became really popular with rock players as well. It also worked great in high gain situations. That really fat bottom end lent to a really unique tone, and they played absolutely great and looked really nice on stage to boot. Now, notable players of 335s, of course, B.B. King, as we said, Chuck Berry, Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters, Roy Orbison played a 335, T-Bone Walker towards the later part of his career, and then Larry Carlton, the great jazz and blues player who, you guessed it, TrueFire alum. Check his courses out, they're fantastic. So obviously it's seen a lot of use in the hands of a lot of really, really wonderful players. Okay, we've got the Tele, we've got the Strat, got the Les Paul, we've got 335 and other miscellaneous related semi-hollow designs from Gibson. It's time for our honorable mentions before we get to not number one, but the last one on my list. Of course, we already mentioned the Gibson SG, which kind of replaced the Les Paul in 1961. Lots and lots of great players have played SGs over the years. Very, very cool design. We also could have included the Rickenbacker, any number of guitars from Rickenbacker, made famous by everyone from the Beatles to the Who, Tom Petty, Heartbreakers, played Rickenbackers often. I also thought about including archtop guitars from Gibson, like the ES-175 or anything that is more sort of full hollow body design, but ultimately I thought that the 335 was a little bit more iconic because it saw so much use in rock. So a few honorable mentions, but that brings me to, again, not the most iconic, but you could almost maybe even argue in a certain way, and that is the Gibson Flying V. Now, the Flying V to me is a really, really funny guitar. It was originally designed in 1958 alongside that sort of later crop of Les Pauls. Ted McCarty kind of got this idea that they needed to do something really bold, really modern, really different, something that used that sort of retro future design language of the 1950s, and so they came out with the Flying V. So now when we see Flying Vs today, they're immediately recognizable, right? Kind of every guitar player at some point is like, oh man, Flying V. At the time, they sold horribly. People thought it was way too radical. It was a bizarre design, and admittedly it is. They only made 98 of them, was the best number that I could find researching all this. And then they were almost immediately discontinued because people just were not biting on these instruments. But, as time went on, the bizarre look, they sort of got this cult of personality around them, and they ended up being in the hands of some of the greatest guitar players in history. Keith Richards grabbed a Flying V from time to time, as did Joe Perry. Zakk Wylde is iconic for his black and white circle design on the Flying V. Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top plays a ton of Flying Vs. Kirk Hammett from Metallica would rock one from time to time. Even Jimi Hendrix, in a very rare departure from his iconic Fender Stratocasters, played a Flying V on a few occasions. And it really cracks me up because the Flying V is a guitar that, it's not about the tone, right? Most players who plug in a Flying V clean are like, well, how does it sound as an instrument? Doesn't sound super great. The ergonomics, you have good upper fret access, but the ergonomics are terrible. You can't play it sitting down, particularly unless you hold it in this weird way. They're super fragile. Those wings at the bottom chip really easily. They can even break off. You need a custom case for it. It's kind of a mess, if we're being honest. It's good. No offense to Flying V players out there, but objectively speaking, it's not the greatest design, but it's about looking cool. It's about standing out. It's about being unique. So for that reason, again, I'm not saying it's the most iconic, but that is why I am including the Flying V on this list. I think it definitely fits the bill as one of the most iconic guitar designs of all time. So there you go. Those, again, just my opinion. You, I'm sure, disagree with me on at least one of these models, and please let me know in the comments if you do and what you think should have been there. So I hope you guys learned something in this. As I said throughout, a bunch of guys who have played these guitar designs, really, really well-known, really cool guys who are really great at playing guitar, have courses on TrueFire.com. TrueFire is an incredibly cool platform. We have thousands and thousands of hours of content on there. You can buy courses individually. You can sign up for our all-access membership. It's an incredible resource if you're learning to play guitar. So we're going to include a bunch of links down in the description to these different artists and their courses, all-access membership, all that great stuff. So please go check it out. I think you guys really enjoy it. But in any case, my name is Alex Scott, again with TrueFire.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be kept up to date with any new videos that we put out. And I will see you in the next one.